As many of you will have of course seen, I recently put out a video, a rant if you will, and kind of a mini review of GranTurismo 7 as well, in which I talked about what many people, even non-GranTurismo players, it was that bad, have been talking about. And that was of course GranTurismo 7's fundamental changing of the price system after 1.07. If somehow you missed that, then of course check out that video, but I'm glad to say we are moving in a better direction. Now, there are still certain things which I mentioned in that video that I still stand by, such as, for example, the prize spins being fundamentally unfair, and also the fact that they don't seem to have learned too much from the update system, and really the core style of gameplay which GT Sport had in terms of being an under construction game which isn't finished at release and has updates which are more reactive to complaints rather than proactive before the complaints can happen. Those points are still, as far as I'm concerned, valid. However, this is undeniably, and credit where it is due, I've always gone both ways when it comes to GranTurismo, both positive and negative. This is most definitely a step in the right direction in a number of ways, and for those who missed this news, I'm going to run through the stuff that you need to know, which is coming very soon. So put simply, toward the start of April, we are seeing some significant changes and improvements, including these. The later events through the cafe missions, which of course is the primary way of working through circuits and unlocking new events, are going to be doubling in prize payout. We're going to have more used cars, both in the regular used dealership and in the high rollers dealership as well. The credit cap is going to be increased from the current 20 million, not that many of us had that much anyway, up to 100 million. Of course, to coincide with being able to earn lots of money, whereas even in GT Sport, you could earn up to 20 million and then no more. Even if you won more in an event, it would just sit at 20 million, and then if you bought a 20 million credit car, you'd be back to nothing. Whereas now, you don't necessarily have to do that. That's pretty nice. We are having new cars and circuits coming to the game, although I doubt those are going to be in the same update. They are, however, going to be beginning within April, according to Kaz himself. So we have new vehicles, new circuits to look forward to also, which of course is always great. We have, interestingly, more missions coming to the game. 8 endurance races in particular, each an hour long. And if you think an hour isn't enough, then bear with me because we're not ending it there as far as endurance news, but for April at least, those 8 missions are going to be added to the missions section of the game and have apparently pretty good payouts. So we'll have to, of course, wait and see pretty much to see what those payouts are. Now, another thing which has been improved is one which I didn't really touch on in that rant video, but a lot of people have had thoughts on, myself included. I just forgot to talk about it, and it was actually one which I believe I mentioned in my way early prediction video for the best way of playing GranTurismo 7, my strategy guide that I put out like a year before the game was released, and that is that the circuit experience events are going to be boosted. In terms of the prizes and the payouts that we get for bronze and for gold, that's fantastic, because again, as it stands, some of those events can be a bit of a pain and the payouts aren't that great, whereas in the past of the franchise, GT Sport for example, they were pretty good. Certainly for a newer player, for example, it was an easy, well, relatively easy way of getting some extra cash at the start of the game. The only downside was that you could only win that cash once, which is fair enough. As far as the longer term plans though, Kaz has also said that they are planning to add more events, which is fairly obvious. If they're adding new circuits, then you would expect events to come with that. Interestingly, they are bringing 24-hour endurance races to the missions menu, and I already know there are going to be people who swing the other way and complain about that they don't want to do 24-hour races. I'm fully aware, of course, that you can never please the whole community. There is always something to complain about, but I'm really happy that they're doing that. I won't necessarily be diving into the 24-hour races immediately, but it's great to have that option, especially when it's part of the official infrastructure of the game, rather than a custom event, because if nothing else, you know that the payout is going to be better. We also know that online time trials are going to be a part of the game, with prize rewards as well. Not necessarily unlocking vehicles, but probably more so the monetary side of things, and interestingly, some allusion to possible seasonal events coming to the game as well. Now, there's an interesting mix here, which I'm going to praise basically across the board because it's all good news, but I think some of this is a mix of stuff that they planned anyway, like seasonals for example, because that's not exactly the kind of thing you could just throw into the game at the last minute, and I think some of the stuff is fairly obviously reactive. So I think the change in the used car dealer is probably more of a reactive thing. I think of course the credit cap change, the prize changes, those are obviously the reactive things for the community. The other things are more, new cars, new circuits. I think they probably had 24-hour events and endurance races in mind anyway, so it's an interesting and I would say overall a pretty healthy mix. And one final note which isn't directly related to GT7, but one which I think Polyphony could have potentially got ahead of the curve on this issue and thought back on, at least in my opinion, and of course what's that really worth, is that I believe the best money grinding method, if you will, that GranTurismo has ever had was actually in GT6. I think GT6 is a game that a lot of people are going to look back on a lot more fondly than they might think they would, compared to how the feel of the game's changed after that from Sport and 7 compared to 6. But it was the Red Bull Championship. You could earn 2.3 million credits from a 5-race event that took about 20 minutes. But even though it only took 20 minutes and each event was relatively short, you were driving a Red Bull, and so was the AI, which meant that you couldn't fall asleep at the wheel. It wasn't a turn your brain off kind of thing, it was genuine fast racing on 5 different circuits, and you were rewarded accordingly. I think that really is what Polyphony needs to capture again. See, what the community is asking for is not fundamentally to drive around in a circle over and over again and get paid 1 billion credits every time. We are fully prepared to put in the work. I think that was a prime example of getting it right, which proves that Polyphony can get it right because they've done it before. 2.3 million every time, added up to about 7 million credits an hour with the daily login bonus. Another thing which I think they could really do with bringing back, because again it rewarded the effort of doing so. But that was just my 2 cents that I wanted to throw in to show that for those of us who maybe have lost some hope, and of course I ranted about it, so I'm not being wishy-washy here and jumping back on the bandwagon. As I said, many of the things I said in that video I still stand by. However, I love the fact that in the case of stuff like the logins, like the Red Bull Championship, Polyphony has shown they can do it because they have done it before. The question is not can they, it's will they. I personally want to have that hope in them, but it remains to be seen, because so far it has a distinctly corporate kind of whiff to it. Ultimately though, tell me your thoughts down below. I believe this is good news overall as a net approach, and of course stick around on the channel for more news for GT7. We will be breaking down of course those teasers. You already know Kaz is going to put out silhouettes for the new cars, and we will be speculating on those, the new circuits of course, and the regular output of tunes, reviews, all that kind of good stuff here on the channel. And obviously when these new events do come in, most likely some new money earning method videos as well. But until next time, I'll see you then, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.